The Adventures of Jace and Brielle. Welcome to the Enchanted Forest series and the Quest for the Golden Acorn. Chapter 1. The Golden Acorn. Jace and Brielle were walking along the shore of Lake Winnipeg near Leicester Beach. The sun was shining down on them, and the sand was warm beneath their feet. They were searching for seashells and looking for interesting things along the way when they stumbled upon a group of kids who were talking about an enchanted forest. The kids were gathered around a boy named Sam, who was telling them a story about a golden acorn that could grant wishes. "I heard it's somewhere in the enchanted forest," Sam said. "But it's impossible to find. No one has ever found it before." Jace and Brielle were intrigued. They had never heard of the enchanted forest, and the idea of a golden acorn that could grant wishes sounded too good to be true. They asked Sam where the enchanted forest was, and he told them it was nearby, just a short hike away. Excited by the prospect of finding the golden acorn, Jace and Brielle decided to set out on a quest to find it. They made a pact to work together and find the golden acorn, no matter what it took. As they walked towards the forest, they talked about what they would wish for. Jace said he wanted a bike, while Brielle wished for a puppy. They walked further into the forest, the trees growing taller and the air growing cooler. They could hear the sound of animals moving around them, but they couldn't see anything. Suddenly, Brielle stumbled on something and fell forward. She turned around and saw a small acorn lying on the ground. "Is this it?" she asked. Jace looked at it and shook his head. "No, that's just an ordinary acorn. The golden acorn would be much bigger and shinier." They continued their search, their excitement growing with each step. As they walked deeper into the forest, they encountered a clearing with a small pond in the center. In the middle of the pond, there was a large tree with golden leaves. "That must be it," Brielle exclaimed. "The golden acorn must be in that tree." Jace and Brielle began to wade into the water, but as they got closer to the tree, they saw that it was guarded by a group of fairies. The fairies were tiny and mischievous, and they were throwing rocks and sticks at the kids. Jace and Brielle retreated, knowing they would need a new plan to get the golden acorn. As they walked away, they realized that their quest for the golden acorn would be much harder than they had imagined. At the end of the chapter, Jace and Brielle have just encountered the fairies guarding the golden acorn, and they realize that their quest will not be as simple as they thought. They must come up with a new plan to get past the fairies and find the golden acorn. Jace and Brielle decided to take a break and come up with a new plan. They sat down on a nearby rock and discussed their options. "We can't just walk up to the fairies and ask for the golden acorn," Jace said. "We need to think of a way to distract them or sneak past them." Brielle looked around and spotted a pile of acorns nearby. "What if we distract them with these?" she suggested. "We could throw them in the opposite direction, and while they're busy, we can sneak past them and get the golden acorn." Jace thought for a moment, then nodded. "That might work. But we need to be careful not to make too much noise." They gathered as many acorns as they could carry and crept back towards the pond. The fairies were still there, buzzing around the tree and giggling to each other. Jace and Brielle took a deep breath and started throwing the acorns in different directions. The fairies turned to investigate the noise, giving the kids a chance to sneak past them and make their way towards the tree. They tiptoed through the water, careful not to make a sound. When they reached the tree, they saw that the golden acorn was nestled in a small nook, just out of reach. Jace stretched out his arm, trying to grab it, but it was just beyond his fingertips. Brielle looked around and saw a nearby branch that could be used to reach the acorn. "Stand back," she said. "I'm going to try to knock it down with this." She grabbed the branch and started whacking at the acorn. After a few tries, it fell down into Jace's waiting hands. "We did it," Brielle exclaimed. "We found the golden acorn." Jace held up the acorn, admiring its shine. "Now, let's make our wishes." Brielle closed her eyes and thought hard. "I wish for a puppy," she said. Jace closed his eyes too. "And I wish for a bike." They waited for a moment, but nothing happened. They looked at each other, disappointed. "Maybe it doesn't work," Jace said. Brielle shook her head. "I don't think that's it. Maybe we wished for the wrong things." They decided to keep the golden acorn and figure out what to do with it later. They walked back towards the shore, tired but happy. Jace and Brielle have successfully retrieved the golden acorn, but their wishes did not come true. They are left wondering what to do with the golden acorn and what they learned about the nature of wishes. Chapter 2: Rumors and Stories. Jace and Brielle knew they had to come up with a plan if they wanted to find the golden acorn. They both agreed to ask their friends if they had any clues or knew anything about the enchanted forest and the golden acorn. The next day, they met up with their friends in the park. Brielle asked her friend Leela if she knew anything about the enchanted forest. Leela giggled and told her that her older brother once told her a story about a magical acorn that could grant wishes. According to the story, the acorn was hidden in the enchanted forest, but nobody had ever found it. Jace listened to Leela's story and wondered if it could be true. He decided to ask his friend Liam if he had heard anything about the enchanted forest. Liam told Jace that his older cousin had been to the forest a few years ago and claimed to have seen a magical creature. Liam didn't know if it was true, but he thought it might be worth checking out. Jace and Brielle were excited by the stories they had heard. They knew they had to investigate further. The next day, they set out to find the entrance to the enchanted forest. After walking for a while, they stumbled upon a sign that read, "Welcome to the enchanted forest." The siblings were overjoyed and couldn't wait to explore the forest. They stepped inside the forest, and the first thing they noticed was the smell of fresh pine trees. As they walked, Jace told Brielle all the stories they had heard from their friends. Brielle listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder. They walked deeper into the forest, and the trees grew taller, making the forest darker. Suddenly, they heard a rustling noise coming from the bushes. Jace and Brielle froze. Jace whispered to Brielle to stay calm and not move. They watched as a small rabbit darted out of the bushes and hopped away. Jace and Brielle breathed a sigh of relief and continued walking. As they explored the forest, Jace and Brielle stumbled upon a small clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a tree that looked different from all the others. Its trunk was wider and its leaves were a shimmering gold color. Jace and Brielle gasped in amazement. Could it be the golden acorn they had been searching for? Just then, they heard a voice behind them. "What are you two doing in my forest?" Jace and Brielle turned around and saw an old man with a long white beard staring at them. "We're looking for the golden acorn," Jace said bravely. The old man chuckled. "I see. Well, you're not the first ones to come looking for it. But I can tell you this, the golden acorn isn't easy to find. It will only reveal itself to those who truly believe in the magic of the forest." With those words, the old man disappeared into the woods. Jace and Brielle looked at each other, both feeling a mix of excitement and uncertainty. Could they really find the golden acorn? Chapter 3: Into the Enchanted Forest. Jace and Brielle woke up early in the morning, eager to start their journey into the enchanted forest. They gathered their backpacks and headed towards the entrance of the forest. The forest looked eerie and mysterious, but they were determined to find the golden acorn. As they entered the forest, they were greeted by the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves. The forest was dense, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. Jace and Brielle followed the trail, and as they walked, they saw a stream that flowed into a small pond. They stopped by the pond, and Brielle skipped a stone on the water, creating ripples that spread across the surface. They drank water from the pond and continued on their journey. As they walked deeper into the forest, they started to hear strange noises. They saw colorful birds and butterflies fluttering around, and Brielle was thrilled to see them up close. Jace, on the other hand, was more focused on their mission and kept his eyes peeled for any signs of the golden acorn. They walked for hours, and the forest seemed to go on forever. The sun was now high up in the sky, and they decided to take a break and have some lunch. They sat under a tree and opened their backpacks, and Brielle pulled out a sandwich and a juice box. Jace had packed some apples and trail mix. As they were eating, they heard a loud rustling noise coming from the bushes. They looked up and saw a deer staring at them curiously. Brielle giggled and tried to pet the deer, but it quickly ran away. Feeling re-energized, Jace and Brielle packed up their things and continued on their journey. As they walked, they noticed that the forest was starting to change. The trees grew taller and the air became colder. They could hear a faint whisper in the wind, almost like a song. Suddenly, they saw a glint of gold in the distance. Excitedly, they ran towards it, but as they got closer, they realized that it was just sunlight reflecting off a rock. Disappointed, they continued on their journey, hoping that they would soon find the golden acorn. As they walked further into the forest, they heard strange noises and saw shadows moving in the trees. They started to feel a sense of unease, but they pressed on, determined to find the golden acorn. Finally, they reached a clearing, and in the center, they saw a giant oak tree with golden leaves. Jace and Brielle stared in awe, wondering if this was the tree that held the golden acorn. As they walked towards the tree, they heard a voice coming from behind them. "Welcome to the enchanted forest," the voice said. Startled, they turned around to see a strange figure standing behind them. Chapter 4: Meeting the Talking Trees. As Jace and Brielle continued deeper into the forest, they heard a strange rustling sound coming from behind some bushes. Jace's adventurous spirit urged him to investigate, but Brielle, on the other hand, was hesitant. "Jace, what if it's a wild animal? Let's go back," Brielle said with a shiver in her voice. "Don't be scared, Brielle. Remember, we're on a quest for the golden acorn, and we can't let anything stop us," Jace replied, trying to encourage his sister. With a deep breath, Jace stepped towards the bushes, and Brielle followed hesitantly. As they drew closer, the rustling sound grew louder, and they heard voices whispering. Suddenly, they burst out of the bushes and found themselves in a clearing surrounded by a ring of trees. The trees were unlike any they had ever seen. They had faces carved into their trunks and branches that looked like outstretched arms. The faces were smiling, and their eyes sparkled with joy as they saw the children. "Welcome, little ones," one of the trees said in a deep, booming voice. "What brings you to our forest?" "We're on a quest for the golden acorn," Jace replied, stepping forward. "Do you know anything about it?" The trees exchanged a knowing look before the one who spoke before said, "We have heard stories about the golden acorn. But to find it, you must prove yourself worthy." "Prove ourselves? How?" Brielle asked, feeling a bit intimidated. The trees then explained that they would have to complete a series of tasks to prove their worthiness. Jace and Brielle looked at each other, knowing they had no choice if they wanted to find the golden acorn. The tasks involved finding hidden objects and solving riddles. Jace and Brielle worked together, and they successfully completed each task. The trees were impressed, and as a reward, they showed the children a secret passage that led deeper into the forest. "Follow this path, and you will find what you are looking for," the trees said, pointing to a narrow path leading into the woods. Jace and Brielle thanked the trees and set off, filled with renewed excitement and determination. They knew they were getting closer to their goal, and nothing would stop them. As they walked along the path, the woods grew darker and denser. The air grew cooler, and the ground became damp underfoot. Jace and Brielle knew they had entered a new part of the forest, and the next challenge awaited them. Chapter 5: Fairies and Mischiefs. Jace and Brielle continued walking through the enchanted forest, feeling the cool breeze on their faces. They had just met the talking trees and were still trying to process the fact that trees could talk. Suddenly, they heard a tinkling sound coming from a nearby bush. Jace and Brielle looked at each other, wondering what it could be. As they approached the bush, they saw a group of fairies dancing and playing around. The fairies were small, with delicate wings and brightly colored clothes. Jace and Brielle watched in awe as the fairies twirled and spun around, making the tinkling sound with their tiny bells. One of the fairies noticed Jace and Brielle and flew towards them. "Hello there, welcome to the enchanted forest," she said in a sweet voice. "I am Flicker, the leader of this group of fairies. What brings you here?" "We're looking for the golden acorn," Jace replied eagerly. Flicker's eyes widened in surprise. "The golden acorn? Oh my! That's a very rare and precious treasure. I'm afraid I haven't seen it, but I can help you look for it if you'd like." Jace and Brielle thanked Flicker for her offer and joined the fairies in their search. They flew through the forest, searching high and low for any sign of the golden acorn. Along the way, the fairies played some mischievous pranks on the siblings, causing them to laugh and forget their worries for a while. As the sun began to set, Flicker and the fairies bid goodbye to Jace and Brielle, promising to continue the search the next day. Jace and Brielle felt grateful to have made new friends in the enchanted forest. They set up camp for the night, feeling excited and hopeful for what the next day would bring. However, as they lay down to sleep, they heard strange noises coming from the surrounding woods. They felt a sudden chill run down their spines, wondering what kind of creatures lurked in the enchanted forest. At that moment, Jace and Brielle realized that their adventure had just begun. Chapter 6: Lost in the Forest. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Jace and Brielle were starting to feel nervous. They had been wandering in circles for hours, unable to find the path they had come from. The trees were getting thicker, and the forest was getting darker. Jace tried to stay calm, but his heart was pounding. He knew they were lost, and the thought of spending the night in the forest scared him. Brielle was feeling the same way. She had tears in her eyes and was holding onto Jace's hand tightly. "We need to find our way back," Jace said, trying to sound confident. Brielle nodded, but she was trembling. They walked a little further, trying to find any sign of the path, but everything looked the same. Suddenly, they heard a loud noise, and Brielle screamed. Jace grabbed her hand and pulled her close. "It's okay, it's just a branch," Jace said, trying to calm her down. But the noise didn't stop. It got louder and louder until they realized it was coming from behind them. They turned around to see a group of mischievous fairies, laughing and shouting as they threw acorns at each other. Jace and Brielle were relieved to see the fairies, but they were still lost. The fairies noticed their distress and offered to help them find their way back. They flew ahead of the children, leading them through the thick forest. The fairies were quick and agile, darting through the trees with ease. Jace and Brielle struggled to keep up, but they were grateful for their help. They felt a sense of relief as they saw a glimmer of light in the distance. They ran towards it and found themselves back on the path they had started on. Jace and Brielle were overjoyed and thanked the fairies for their help. The fairies waved goodbye and disappeared into the forest. Jace and Brielle continued their journey, feeling more confident and brave than ever before. As they walked down the path, Brielle looked up at Jace and smiled. "Thanks for being so brave, Jace," she said. Jace smiled back, feeling proud of himself. "We're a great team," he replied. And with that, they continued their journey deeper into the enchanted forest, eager to find the golden acorn and complete their quest. Chapter 7: Quicksand Trouble. Jace and Brielle were struggling to find their way out of the enchanted forest. The trees looked the same, and they had no sense of direction. They tried retracing their steps, but it only led them deeper into the forest. Just when they thought they had found a way out, they stumbled upon a patch of quicksand. Brielle, being the youngest and smallest, was the first to fall in. Jace tried to pull her out, but he only ended up sinking himself. Panic set in as they struggled to keep their heads above the surface. Suddenly, a group of fairies appeared, attracted by the commotion. They quickly understood the situation and worked together to save the siblings. Using their magic, they levitated them out of the quicksand and onto solid ground. Jace and Brielle were grateful and thanked the fairies for their help. The fairies warned them to be careful in the forest and avoid wandering into dangerous areas. Jace and Brielle learned a valuable lesson about being cautious and aware of their surroundings. As they continued on their journey, they realized that they had been heading in the wrong direction. They decided to follow the advice of the fairies and stay on the main path. But as they walked, the trees began to close in on them, and they felt like they were being watched. Chapter 8: The Golden Acorn Found. Jace and Brielle had been wandering through the forest for hours, with no luck in finding the golden acorn. They were tired, hungry, and frustrated. Just as they were about to give up, they stumbled upon a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a beautiful oak tree, with a bright golden acorn nestled at its base. Jace and Brielle couldn't believe their luck. They had finally found the golden acorn they had been searching for. They ran towards the tree, but as they got closer, they heard a loud growling noise. They froze in their tracks, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, a small furry creature appeared from behind the tree. It had a long snout, pointy ears, and sharp claws. It was a weasel, and it was clearly not happy to see Jace and Brielle. The weasel started to charge towards them, and Jace and Brielle scrambled to their feet, unsure of how to defend themselves. Just as the weasel was about to pounce, a group of fairies appeared out of nowhere. They surrounded the weasel and began to chant. To Jace and Brielle's amazement, the weasel shrank in size until it was no bigger than a mouse. The fairies then turned to Jace and Brielle and explained that the weasel was a mischievous creature who liked to cause trouble. They had been watching Jace and Brielle's journey through the forest and wanted to help them find the golden acorn. The fairies then led Jace and Brielle to a hidden pathway that they had missed before. It led them straight to the golden acorn. Jace and Brielle couldn't believe their eyes. They had finally found it. As they held the golden acorn in their hands, they felt a surge of joy and accomplishment. They had overcome so many challenges and obstacles to get to this point, but they had done it together. As they made their way back through the forest, Jace and Brielle felt a sense of gratitude towards the fairies who had helped them. They knew they couldn't have done it without them. Chapter 9: The Real Treasure. As they trekked back through the forest, Brielle couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. She had grown so attached to the enchanted forest and all its inhabitants that leaving it behind made her heart heavy. However, she knew that their adventure wasn't over yet. They still had to find out what the real treasure was. After a few hours of walking, the group finally reached the clearing where they had started their journey. Brielle's heart raced as she realized that they were finally going to find out what the treasure was. As they dug through the leaves and debris, they found an old chest buried in the ground. With bated breath, they opened it to find a simple piece of paper with a message scrawled on it. This forest was the real treasure all along. Cherish it and protect it for generations to come. At first, Brielle felt disappointed. She had expected to find something like gold or jewels. But as she thought about the message, she realized that the forest truly was the most precious thing she had ever discovered. She felt a sense of responsibility to protect it and ensure that future generations could enjoy its magic. With newfound determination, Brielle and her friends pledged to do all they could to preserve the enchanted forest. They left the clearing feeling fulfilled and satisfied, knowing that they had completed their quest for the golden acorn. Chapter 10: Journey's End. As they emerged from the enchanted forest, Brielle and Jace breathed a sigh of relief. It had been a long and perilous journey, but they had finally found the golden acorn and the real treasure. They walked along the path towards their home, the golden acorn nestled safely in Brielle's backpack. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the trees, and the air was filled with the sweet fragrance of blooming flowers. As they neared their home, they heard laughter coming from that direction. Chelsea, their mom, and Jason, their dad, were waiting for them at the entrance of their home. They both ran towards them, tears streaming down their faces, and they hugged them tightly. "You're home." Brielle and Jace smiled at each other, feeling proud of their accomplishment. They had faced danger and adversity, but they had come out victorious. As they sat together, enjoying the company of their loved ones, Brielle and Jace realized that their journey had taught them much more than just how to find the golden acorn. They had learned the importance of perseverance, courage, and friendship, and they had discovered that the greatest treasure was not gold, but the people they loved. And so, as they looked up at the stars twinkling in the sky, Brielle and Jace knew that their journey had come to an end, but that a new adventure was just beginning.